someone called me the mommy queen, and I actually loved that. And this year I really and truly got to be the mommy queen because we didn't have a chief to mask with us. Well, I actually say we're unmasking because you're revealing your true identity. And we didn't have any other adults. But we had these children from 2, and they were quite young. Maybe the oldest one is 8. And they walked the whole route. We have a designated route, and then I go into the Treme. They didn't come in the Treme with me. And we walked the whole route, which was 8 stops. And nobody got in the car.
Would you mind, first of all, if you would snap your fingers for the camera?
Okay.
And that'll help us set our audio.
Awesome, thank you.
And then the other thing is, if you would explain, because explain the Mardi Gras Indian, explain the tradition, explain a little bit about this, because most people outside of New Orleans, at least my neck of the woods, have not heard of you and what you do.
Well, if you ask 20 people who participate in this tradition, you will get 20 different answers. So I will give you Cherice's answer. For me, this tradition is an homage to the resistance of people of African descent in the fact that they did not want to maintain or continue an existence of being enslaved. The prayer song, which has the line, "We won't bow down," it becomes a way of life. When something is happening, it'll just come out, "I'm not bowing down. I'm not bowing down to that." And so the most common narrative you'll hear is when slaves ran away from the plantation, the Indians took them in. Well, first of all, I want to clarify, I do not use the word slave because they were human beings. And to me, slave is a qualitative word. And if we're going to talk qualitativeness, then we need to talk about the people who were inhumane and enslaved other human beings. So, enslaved people of African descent self-emancipated themselves, and some of them were assimilated into Native American groups, and others lived in maroon colonies, in the swamps, on the edges of the plantations. I hang my hat on the ones that lived separate and apart and maintained some of their African ways of being. For me, it is about honoring the resistance of my ancestors, not bowing down. We are the dream. That's our theme this year. Someone prayed, and when I say that, I told my mother when we were working on the theme, and it came to me, that it brought tears to my eyes because I know someone said, "Oh Lord, please, don't let my children be enslaved. Oh Lord, please, let them be able to read. Oh Lord, please." Oh, we are the ones they prayed for. I'm sorry, I hit your mic. We are the ones they prayed for. They dreamed a better life for us. We are the dream. So no one knows exactly when the masking started, because some individuals were assimilated into Native American groupings. Then you had people who look like me who were indigenous to this area. When someone wrote that they saw a person dressed in what appeared to be Native American clothing in the late 1800s. But was it a person, were the clothing like the Native Americans here? How can you say that it was a mask? And the other part of that is if they were people who were assimilated into a Native American group, part of assimilation is dress, foodways, all those things are part of assimilation. And I always make the analogy that people will say, "I love your costume." This is not a costume. These are my clothes. So you could have been seeing someone with their clothes on and you thought it was a costume. Also, if you escaped, self-emancipated yourself, you think you're going to walk around with the same clothes you had on the plantation? Hey, I ran away, ha ha ha. Catch me if you can. No, you're not. So I think that I want to give more credence to the fact that my ancestors were strategic, they were resilient, they were intelligent, and they were survivors.
So the beading that you're doing, and you talked about there being a special technique, and you talked, is this something that you developed yourself and is harking back? You were taught, like you said, you're teaching it. Is there a tradition?
That's just my way of beading. I actually asked my daddy to teach me how to bead, and he didn't teach me when I wanted to. And so I went into my home and I taught myself to bead. But beadwork is so prevalent. When you look at the beadwork that we do, it's more closely related to Yoruba beadwork and beadwork from other areas of West Africa. A gentleman who travels back and forth from Cameroon brought me a horsetail switch to use on carnival, and it has beadwork on the handle. That's Cameroon. There's beadwork in Ghana. So again, this is a celebration of who I am as a person of African descent. I almost consider it like as far as religion, I'll tell people that I have a pan-religious belief because I have a little bit, I'm Catholic, and there are times when I may go to a Baptist church because I just need to take a bath in who we are as a people. And there are other times that I may embrace some traditional West African religions because that's what serves me and serves my spirit. And I forgot the point I was making.
Well, in terms of the origin, I think of.
Did I answer your question?
I think
No,
you
probably not.
I think you got close because the question really was, what is the origin of this? And you mentioned it's
Well,
global.
Yeah, and also it's an homage to people of African descent and Native American descent in their quest for freedom of expression, freedom of movement, freedom to be who they are in America, something that was denied to both groups of people, something that was imposed, standards that were imposed upon them simply because of their ancestry, not part of the American dream. They were subjected to unfair laws, codes. You have to have a place where you can be free. And this was a place for people of African descent to be free.
So, being the dream, you said earlier you realized you were the dream, as it had been envisioned. What has your experience been? A large part of this project we're working on is to find out your personal history and how you perceive what your experience has been living in New Orleans and being who you are. What has your experience been here growing up and living and working, following traditions, being someone who bears a culture for others?
Well, it's funny you should ask that question. Because my mother was reading an article, I don't know, probably from the late 80s or early 90s. In the car, my father was interviewed and she was reading the article, parts of it. And he talked about how important this tradition was to him. And his father didn't want him to be a part of it. And I am the third of 5 generations in our family to participate in this tradition. But one of the things he said was that, excuse me, one of the things he said, excuse me. So one of the things he said was that he had a stable family life. And he lived with both of his parents. I forgot, I think it was 6 or 7 of them. They lived in a home, and his father worked, his mother worked, and they raised their children. And my father, there's no doubt, he loved this tradition. It was in the marrow of his bones, just as it's in the marrow of my bones. But as much as he loved this tradition, he participated for 1949 to 1969. He took a 20-year break because he loved his family more. And he used to say, it's not a halfway house. Either you're in or you're out. And there are two things you have to dedicate to this tradition: your time and your money. And those were two things he wasn't willing to give to this tradition and risk not having what we needed as his family. So for that fact alone, I love my daddy more than, even more, if you could love your daddy more, because I knew and I know that it was difficult for him, but it was a no-brainer. And I think that's one of the things that people don't talk about enough. I prefer to be called an American African or a person of African descent. But there's a lot of talk about black-on-black crime, but we don't talk about black-on-black love. And we can love up on each other. We can love up on each other. And that's what I grew up with. I grew up in a community, in a family, where you were loved. I often speak of, I was asked to participate in something for the 10th anniversary of Katrina, commemoration. And they wanted me to wear my suit from 2012. And at first I was going to wear the suit. But that suit was very special to me because it was Rise Up. It was made when I was going through my cancer treatment. And before I had my hair taken from chemo, I cut it to go in battle mode. And there were some self-portraits on the suit and the crown and on the apron. And my actual hair was sewn into it. So it didn't seem right to wear that for Katrina. I think it's a beautiful suit. So 3 weeks before the event, I told my mother, I want to make a new suit for the Katrina commemoration. And I just knew she was going to say, what? It's 3 weeks away. But instead, she said, whatever I can do to help you, I will do. And so I made the suit, and my mother put the patches on the jacket. And I've told this story probably so many times, but it's so special to me. And every time I put the jacket on, I felt like my mother was hugging me. The love for her to sit up for hours to make a special suit because her big-headed oldest daughter decided she wanted a suit 3 weeks before the event. But I only wore that suit, I think, 2 or 3 times, but each time I put it on, tears welled up in my eyes because it's a testament to our resilience.
Well, and the love you're describing too.
And the love, but the resilience, because I'm wearing it as not a celebration that we're still here 10 years, but in spite of everything y'all did, to not service us, the city, the citizens of New Orleans.
Yeah, it's true.
Still I rise, still I rise.
So talk about that a little bit. I mean, I think it's kind of interesting the way New Orleans was sort of just not responded to. Did you feel as though you had any voice in government, any voice as a part of the Louisiana state?
Well, we were in Houston, and I think we were at the Hyatt Hotel. I don't remember. We stayed there for like a month and a half. But it was the same hotel where I guess you would call them search and rescue. People from California came down. They had beautiful dogs. and they were in the lobby, and I went down to the lobby one night, and they were talking, and they said, and it really resonated with me, they're allowing us to sit here at the Hyatt Hotel while this goes from a search and rescue to a search.
Mm.
Every hour we sit here, someone is dying. And they were there for a couple of days. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, that's true.
Oh, yeah.
They're sitting at the Hyatt. They came all the way from California to go find remains of humans rather than human beings alive. Pretty difficult. And you know, after Katrina, well, the federal levee breaks, the infrastructure of the city is still suffering. Schools are still broken.
So you're a teacher.
I'm always, I'll be a teacher till
Yeah.
they are, you know, not here anymore. And hopefully my spirit will still teach someone.
So what are your thoughts about the educational system? Because we've heard a lot of mixed comments on that. And it's difficult to decipher between what's being said nationally and what people say here, which is also very heterogeneous, their responses.
I think the system is failing too many children.
In what ways?
Well, we just finished talking about this at lunch. During the time that I worked for the Recovery School District, there was an in-service at one of the hotels downtown, very nice. Continental breakfast, fresh fruit, croissants, little jars of jelly and butter in a little round butter thing, a little round whatever, but very pretty. The lunch was a seafood dish and a chicken dish with Capri salad that was delicious with fresh basil and a balsamic vinegar drizzle, and simply delicious. Snacks in the evening, little bottles of Coke and cookies, warm cookies and candy bars. But the thing that resonated with me most in the day that I decided I couldn't be a part of that system was during one of the breakout sessions. And the facilitator said, "We don't know what we're doing. We're flying the plane as we're building it." And the room burst into laughter, except for me. I didn't think it was funny. You're playing with children's lives. If you build a plane while you're flying it, what's going to happen to that plane? Probably crash, huh?
If I were building it, yeah, I can't add most of the time, so it wouldn't fly.
Precisely.
But that also doesn't give any time for reflection, which I thought part of what, well, I don't want to ask too leading questions, but was there any time for reflection and thinking about the school systems before people jumped into?
It was a plan, I think, because it was supposedly they took the schools over because some schools had a low school performance score. But after Katrina, the levee breaks, that data didn't mean anything. It was a do-over opportunity because you no longer had the same students in the same school, in the same neighborhoods. So, do-over. Oopshaw almost went to Recovery School District. But Katrina came, federal levee breaks. Let's do this all over again. But instead, they made the Recovery School District all these charter schools, and they're just not serving the needs of all children. And I know that may sound Pollyannish, but I know all children can learn. You have to find the way to teach a particular child. And for my other analogy is that I was an exceptional children's teacher. So if someone came to you and said, you have a deaf child, "Oh, I have a wonderful teacher, won awards, they've written books, they have new innovative ways to teach children, but it's for blind children. To you, so what? You have a deaf child. You have to have what that child needs. And if they need more interaction, if they need instruction that is culturally based and not culturally devoid, to help them matriculate and achieve at an optimal level, then that's what they need.
So the recovery plan before Katrina was going to be accommodating that? How far along was it?
Accommodating what?
Accommodating learning styles and
No,
needs
no.
of a variety of children.
No. I don't know. I shouldn't say that. But maybe. I'll say maybe.
But
I'll
we-
say maybe. But what I'm saying is that they totally negated the intellectual stock of the city. When you went to apply for a job with the Recovery School District, they didn't care anything about your credentials. Basically, the requirement was to pass some release test items from the 4th grade LEAP test. What an insult. I have a teaching certificate for life. I have a master's degree plus 30. I had to take a 4th grade test.
So what is your perception of the charter schools now? Where are they working? Where are they
I
not
just can't
working?
even talk about it really because it's
That's
depressing.
all right. Yeah, if you don't want to.
Yeah, because you can't really talk. It's hard to talk about it. Number one, because there are 5 different categories of schools, and I guess I see too many children who are not learning. They're not learning what they should learn, and they're creating children for the service industry. Not for, NASA jobs. You go learn how to be, work in a restaurant starting as a busboy. I'm just saying. Although they do have a couple of programs now with the STEM, the science, technology, and I forgot what the E is for. Math.
Engineering.
Engineering, that's right.
Yeah. And now they're also, I don't know about here, but there's STEAM, which includes arts in that.
Well,
which
that's
I
good.
was happy to see happen.
Well, I'm glad. I'm happy
I
to
don't know
hear
if it's
that.
happening here. It's happening in New York State.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. But, I just think that the education system is test driven, and I want to see more children that look like me go to college. But if everyone went to college, who would wash the dishes? Who would clean the hotel rooms? I'm just saying. And that's a sad fact. That's a sad reality. And that's a reality that pierces your heart. Because what are they saying? 1, 2, 3, you dishwasher. 1, 2, 3, you maid.
Have you done all of that while we've been sitting here?
Oh no, I think I did.
I just, the light just hit it and I saw it.
Yeah, well, I'm just starting this piece. I want
Now, you called this again, what did you call that?
a cocoa naan.
Cocoa nut.
It's an Adinkra symbol from Ghana, from the Akan people in West Africa. I probably should put some lipstick on. I think I have dry lips and chapped lips. Yeah.
So how long does it usually take to make a suit? The 3 weeks, I understand was a rush, but how long do you usually take?
I can't really say how long it takes. That's like asking a sculptor how long it takes to sculpt because you're thinking about it. It's an intellectualized process. It's a spiritual process. You're listening to the ancestors. You have to plan how you're going to execute your designs, color schemes, all those things come to you in different forms and fashion. And how could you quantify that? It's more qualitative, I guess, because when you start to do something, you may start out on one path and go somewhere else because you're led to do that. And what you started on, maybe you won't put it on that suit, it'll go on a suit for a child or a future suit. So when you're wearing it on a future suit, you spent time a year ago. And in my instance, this patch that was made for me by Ike, who's the oldest known living Indian, I don't know how much time he spent on that, but that is definitely time that goes into my suit. When my mother's sitting in her bed, hand stitching the lining in my jacket, I didn't spend time on it, but somebody did. And trust me, she wouldn't let me go out the door. I'm not playing. They would be playing the drums, and she would, wait, before you go out, I gotta do this and I gotta do that. Just stand still for 1 second.
So when you're teaching the kids who are interested in doing this now, are there symbols that they're drawn to?
Well, we try to encourage everyone to pick an Adinkra symbol. And our group design has an Adinkra symbol within it. It's Sankofa, which means to go and learn your past, to know your past, so that it will guide and direct you in your future. So that's our group symbol. And we, hope that every child has it on their suit. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I'm a realist. And I know one family picked a symbol, which is somebody else picked it also. Well, I don't want to say someone else picked it. It's part of my son's little repertoire of symbols. It's the guardian, and it's a star with a lot of points on it. Because it's, our group is Guardians of the Flame.
So, a lot of what I do on these are not like interviews, they're oral history. So a lot of what I do is let people tell us what they want people to know about New Orleans or about culture here. And I'm curious because you have so many components that you're involved in terms of the culture and maintaining the culture and thinking about the past and preserving cultural heritage and moving forward. These are all really important things you're involved in. How do you describe New Orleans now?
Well, as my mother is always encouraging me to see the hope, that I'm hopeful that it will be better. And I pray for those whose names I will never know, future generations, that they will indeed receive a good quality education, that they can live in a home, a nice home, and be part of the American dream. And again, as my mother has said, that hopefully those coming up, even me, can amass enough wealth that we can begin to have generational wealth and truly live the American dream. But also, I pray for them to have a healthy mind, body, soul, and commitment to future generations and to their communities, because that's important. You can't, to me, you shouldn't live in a bubble. You shouldn't be selfish. To whom much is given, much is expected. And I pray, just as my ancestors closed their eyes tight, I close my eyes tight. And that's my prayer. So I am hopeful. I don't know how it's going to happen, When my ancestors prayed at the time when we couldn't read, they couldn't imagine how it would happen that we would have bookcases and bookcases, a whole room of books when I grew home. We had a library room. They couldn't imagine that, but we had it. We took it for granted. So, I forgot the second part of your question.
Sorry. I think you answered a big part of my question. I was really also interested in knowing more about the pieces you have here because you brought a whole bunch of stuff.
Well, I think one of the things, and I guess I have like 5 different hats. I'm the mommy queen. Well, first I'm the mother of my son. Then I'm the mommy queen. I'm the daughter of Cherice Harrison and Donald Harrison. I am a guardian of the Flame Maroon Society. I'm the curator and co-founder of the Hall of Fame, Mardi Gras Indian Hall of Fame. And then there's the 5th piece that's just me. And that's the part that I need to nourish a little more. But part of the mission of the Mardi Gras Indian Hall of Fame and the Guardians Institute is centered around education and the preservation and perpetuation of indigenous traditions that emanate from African American communities. So it kind of bothered me that every time, or most of the time, when people speak of this tradition, it's an oral tradition and they don't have anything written down. I decided that through the Mardi Gras Indian Hall of Fame, we would do some shorter interviews, life history, and document people's stories. And as my daddy would say, create paper. So we create paper. And the books are a testament, again, to that black on black love, the strength of the African American spirit, and a cultural tradition that provides, and I don't even want to say provides, that people have taken this tradition to create a space to be self-actualized. That's part of man's needs. Maslow's, I think, hierarchy of needs, to be self-actualized, and this is a place where that can happen. It's part of one of the principles of Kwanzaa, Kujichagulia, self-determination. But all of them, because there's faith, unity, all those things are important. Beauty in this tradition. So I can't recite all 7 of the Kwanzaa principles now. That's why I wish I had one of my 8-year-old students that could tell you, Umoja, Ujama, Ujima. But the first thing, our last project in that one on top, that book on top, this is a catalog. And it's Man Child in a Crescent City, and it's a celebration of African American males, youth. We need to hold our men and our boys up because, unfortunately, mass media, in many instances, will tear them down. We need to import to them their greatness, their inherent greatness. It exists within your spirit. It exists within your soul. It exists within the mitochondria of your cells, literally. And I think when children know their greatness, you get greatness from them. I have to tell you this, the reason why I don't use the word slave in reference to my ancestors. When I taught 3rd grade, I had my students to draw a picture of a slave and a description. They drew pictures with people with their hair sticking out, sitting down, no shoes on. And they're 3rd grade, so everything is kind of over magnified. And when they read their descriptions, they said things like stupid, thieves, raggedy clothes, no teeth. And in that space, I decided I would never use the word slave to refer to my ancestors because they were human beings. Being enslaved was a condition imposed by people who were not very humane. And so if you think you descend from that, you may believe you are that. So I need to make sure any child I come in contact with that they know about the greatness of West Africa. They know about the kingdoms. And I'm not saying everything was peachy, and romanticizing that, because when you, again, as my mother says, when you share history, you have to give a balance. And so we try to do that in ways that are appropriate for the children. So with this exhibit, it's curated by my mother and I. And in the first section of the book, we just have the children. It's my mom's favorite. It's Brody. We call him Brody, who can do no wrong in Miss Harrison's eyes. And so it's just the children. And then the second part of the book, it's from that song, The Greatest Love. Children are our future. Treat them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Give them a sense of pride to make it easier. I thought that just kind of is what this is about, giving them a sense of pride. And when they have a sense of pride and they're rooted in a cultural identity, that in itself is one of the building blocks for being successful, in my estimation again. So we have pictures of the children with adults. Here's a picture of the little chief with the council chief. And again, that black on black love that's underreported. Grandfather and his grandson. And these are friends, two little, the older one holding, if you can see.
That's Brody.
Yeah, it's a Brody again. Holding the younger one's hand. Grandfather again. This is one of the chiefs who he has a loft with, what's the name of them? Rock doves. So it's like a homing pigeon. They go back home to the loft. But every year he releases birds at the memorial for the Hall of Fame. And he always goes around to let the children touch the bird before he releases it. And sometimes he'll let a child release the bird too, if it's an older bird. So you have him with one of the younger Indians. This is a family, underreported, family love, men present in the home. This is actually my cousin, and he had wanted a child when he was older, and they had the child, and the lady died. She passed away when he was 4 or 5 years old, and so he's raised him by himself. Black on black love. And one of my favorites, he's, putting his baby suit on. And this child was 1, and he was teaching him how to pull a needle.
Oh, wow.
This is the same child. Those are my boys, my nephew and my son. And this is just the joy friends. When they got their crown bands to try on, they ran around the house with them. They thought they were like Superman and Batman jumping off of things. They were so happy. Twin brothers, my son and my dad, and my son This picture was put in because I needed a place filled. I have to be honest. And then that's one of our little ones with the mayor. He was then a lieutenant governor. And the Hall of Fame was started at a public school. And this was the last marquee before, well, the marquee that was up, that event. So, and that's all the Mardi Gras Indian groups.
So you talked about creating paper, but you're creating a tactile memory with the beading
Yes,
and the student and the kids growing up learning it, becoming students of that.
yes, yes. And they learn not in a traditional manner. It's more like taking a bath in it. Does a fish know he's in water? They don't know they're learning it because it's what we do. But they'll know it's special at some point in their lives. And by the time they realize it's special, they have already gotten the roots to be great. Because once you are a member of this tradition, it gives you a certain sense of self-pride, truly not bowing down, a sense of strength, how to meet people, strong, because that's what it's about. Meeting, even though it's a game, it's like a military maneuver when you meet someone, but you have to meet them strong. And so the children are constantly hearing words like strong, stand up, don't bow down. Think about that. That's kind of revolutionary in a sense, although it's very ancient. But to instill this as a way of life in children and even in adults, because I didn't come to this until, even though I was born in it and my daddy did it, but I didn't actually participate until I was an adult. But I know that I hear the language in every day. I'm not bowing down to that. I'm going to meet him like a man. I'm going to meet him, strong. And I don't run from people. If I have a problem with you, I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to try to avoid you. Because who are you?
So, in terms of the Mardi Gras Indian Hall of Fame,
Yes.
in terms of creating paths that people can see themselves living in, what do you think are the next steps here? Are there concrete things that could happen in New Orleans in particular? Or things that shouldn't happen in New Orleans in particular?
As we approach the tricentennial, one of the plans is to put markers at significant sites throughout the city, including sites that have to do with the transatlantic trade of human beings and the sale of human beings here in the city. And I would hope that when they're telling that part of our collective history, that they begin to use language that a child that looks like me can read and not feel they're a lesser human being. That they will know their ancestors suffered a condition, but it's not the definition of who they are. And I think it's important for us to talk about people in terms of being human beings. That is the most important race. And not a slave and a master and a missus. That's qualitative. If you gave that to someone, they would rank that. And where would slave be? I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm. So who is involved? Is it a welcoming community in terms of developing the tricentennial?
I hope so.
Commemorations.
I hope so. I hope so. I really do. But
because what
New
you're
Orleans
describing has to have all people represented in developing it.
They're supposed to be.
Yeah.
I'll put my 2 cents in. We're on the committee. Haven't been invited back to a meeting. I certainly hope so. New Orleans, in many ways, is like this tradition. It's ancient and it's contemporary. New Orleans is changing. The face of the city is changing. The population is shifting. But at the same time, some of the traditions that exist in our communities and others also as well are very old. And I just hope that it doesn't get watered down, because evolving and watering down are kind of two different things to me, to the point that you no longer recognize where it came from. And I pray and close my eyes tightly that future generations, whose names I do not know, will know about us and will know about how special their ancestors are or were. And be rooted in that. Be rooted in their greatness. I want people should be rooted in their greatness. Our history didn't start with, well, the slaves used to do this. And now when I hear that kind of talk, it's so disturbing to me because it is so classist. And if you hear that all the time, you take it in on another level. That's why you have to be rooted in your own greatness. You have to know you're great before you hear that. Because how did my 8-year-old students get acculturated? Where did that come from? That means it's everywhere. The images that they're being bombarded with. And they were being bombarded with those type of images in the 1980s. Think about how much more information is coming through today. In the 1980s, they had a movie that came on every day on regular TV at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. But now, you think they have a 2-hour movie at 3 o'clock on the regular, station? So, that's my beaded soapbox. So I have other books. So
what would you like to tell us that we haven't gotten to? Tell us about.
Let me see the calendar. There's a calendar in there.
Light's more of a problem.
Is her audio?
She's still fine, yeah.
So I think collaboration is important. So we're a very small organization, the Mardi Gras Indian Hall of Fame, but we partnered with WWOZ radio station to produce this calendar. And they had, I think it's called podcast because I'm not into all of that, but little interviews that were on the radio, on a website, you could click on it. Okay, they had those. So, and they also had PSAs that ran whatever month you were in. So if you were Miss January, there was a PSA that ran for Miss January throughout the day. And I'm doing a grant, so I call to get some number they asked on the application. So I said, okay, well, how many people you think, interacted with the calendar and heard the podcasts and whatever you call the other thing? And the person who does numbers at WWOZ told me, I was expecting like 10,000. I was like, oh, this is going to be really good, 10, 15 maybe. He told me 3 million. So when you think about that for a little organization, here I am. But each one of the things that I asked them to do was to make sure that they wrote a little, history, bio for each of the queens. And they did that. Behind the mask, the person behind the mask. This is a wonderful tradition, and it does define you in many ways, but it's one aspect of a person full of all kinds of hats that they wear, and we call our hats the feathered headdress are also called hats, or crowns and hats. So, wearing that feathered headdress is one of my hats, but this is one also that I am very clear that I am a person of African descent. I am very clear that I am a New Orleanian. I am very clear that I come from greatness. I am very clear that I am a guardian of the flame. I am very clear that I must pass this flame on to others. I am very clear that I am an educator and a mommy queen. And children must have hope. We have to. My mother says it all the time. We can't just complain about what's happening in the city and not give them a sense of hope that it's going to be better. And again, I got to close my eyes and say to the Creator, please, 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 and name those things I want for children: good education, economic opportunity. Because economic opportunity is different than a good job. And why shouldn't we use this language with children? Post levy break, because we've had children before in our group, but post levy break, more strategic, our children get compensated, because when we do this on Carnival Day, we do it on St. Joseph Day, from the heart, because we love this. This is what we do. Any other day, it's a business arrangement. And our children get compensated. They're artists. They get artist fees. And so my mother instituted this policy. I know, she's over there. Where the children had to, when they were paid, they had to maintain a financial journal. They were required to save a portion of the money, donate a portion of the money, donate, invest. They could buy a savings bond. I hate that you can't buy physical savings bonds anymore. And also to get something that you want, like immediate. You got some money, go whatever you want. So you have a five or 6 year old child getting paid $75 or $100 for 20 minutes of work. That's a lot of money, because most people, as my mother said, don't make $75 an hour. And our children never work more than 30 minutes. So you don't want them to just think this is play money. How do you instill that in children? By doing it when they're young. It's the thing to do.
So how many events, you said there were 2 that you guys do as part of your tradition, and then how many events a year do you think people are involved in, or do you know they're involved in, where they're artists and they're explaining what they're doing and why they're doing it as part of an art process?
I don't really know, but that's primarily what we do more than entertainment. I prefer not to be the singing, dancing, brown person, melanated person in the room. And even if we're hired to do that, we still put some historical and cultural context within the presentation. So you have people who simply do entertainment, and you have those who do, as you said, more cultural presentations. But I really couldn't tell you. I would say on a yearly basis, we probably have opportunities to do maybe 20 to 30 things a year. It's always good when you get to go to Brazil free. Oh, please. Can I go back to Brazil? Please, I want to go to Ghana.
I can't say that this will reach 3 million people, because it does have archives at the end of it. That kind of turns some people away. But what is there something you want people to know or to think about coming up here, or some annual event that you want people to know about? Because this is another sort of venue for that.
Well, I guess if they come to Carnival, to just enjoy all the aspects of Carnival and realize that it's not just the Carnival that you see on television, that there are Carnival celebrations and traditions that exist in the African American community, and other communities as well, and to enjoy the diversity of the city of New Orleans and how this city is a microcosm of our world, but we just party with a purpose most of the time. And everything, the music, the food, all of it's a way of being and a way of life, but at the same time, it serves to strengthen our communities. Because I don't care who said it, that's a big fat fib that culture bubbles up from the street. It's not Jack and a Beanstalk, and you throw some beans at Mardi Gras India, brass band, jazz musician, fantastic culinary artist. All these traditions usually come from some sort of community rooting. And communities make great cities. So we need to make sure our communities are strong and they have what they need so that those who, where these traditions are cultivated are healthy and the traditions can continue to live and thrive.
Awesome. Do you guys have questions? I usually give everyone
Okay.
an opportunity if they have a question to ask.
Questions?
I mean, I just want to make sure that we got shot. These are so,
It's beautiful.
yeah, they're gorgeous.
Yeah.
They look
And this is a piece, I don't think I showed you that, I didn't finish, because I couldn't find it, but we were inducted into a Royal Society in Cameroon, and their colors are blue and white, so the background here is going to be blue and white. But I can't find these little stones, so I'm stuck because I have to have the stones to go around, as you can see, each one of these little pieces. But the suits are a reflection of who you are, their narrative, and everything about the tradition is narrative. The songs, the beadwork, the dances, it's narrative. You're telling a story. And I always tell people that, okay, Bethany, this is very provocative, that I don't mask on Carnival Day, I come out naked. Because if I am taking what is in me, for instance, my suit last year was about Madison.
I'm not in.
Did you end up in the shot? Yeah, you started.
Your suit was about Madison.
Madison was my great-great-grandfather. He was stolen from his parents in Virginia in 1820. Was it 20? And brought here and enslaved. And so if my suit is about Madison and that's the story I'm telling, I'm not masking because I am Madison's great-great-granddaughter. So I come out naked. This is who I am. This is the essence of who I am. And when I open up, I am fully naked. But it's kind of a play on the whole Mardi Gras. What you see is something else. So that when you think I'm masking, I'm really unmasking. I love it.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
So I was listening.
Probably say, is she ever going to shut up?
I've been listening, but in the interview seat, okay. So, how do you feel being in the home, this house, that the man the Spanish sent to capture all the Maroons and then execute them? How do you feel being in this space?
You just,
Knowing that. Because I have a really hard time knowing that and knowing that he's buried at St. Louis Cathedral.
I almost feel like I can't breathe now.
I know.
Really.
But I just want to, I feel like every day I want to live my life in a way that tries to bring good into this community, because what he did was such a horrible, horrible thing.
It was horrible. It still is horrible because
It's horrible.
that, just like generational wealth, we have generational trauma.
Yeah.
And we still feel the trauma of what happened to our ancestors.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm here because I want to set in motion any small thing I can do.
I'm going to have to come here and just spend some time in this space for one of my suits. Because I promise you, the air got heavier
I know.
when you said that. And I think you're right. We have to find ways of cleansing the evil of the world. We have to be the change we want to see. And when we're thinking about change, we need to think about the change we want for the people who share DNA with us. Mm-hmm. And if you're not wanting the same kind of change for others, you need to check yourself. Because if not, it's them and us, and it becomes that qualitative sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And the us is always at the bottom. Right. I mean, the them is always at the bottom.
I have to tell you a very powerful thing that the night after the ownership transferred to me, it was Halloween.
I remember.
The voodoo drummer.
Yes.
Were on the other side of the wall. The next morning when I woke up.
Yeah, we did the sage downstairs.
Yeah, you did the sage, and it was wonderful. But I knew that this was right when the next morning, which was All Saints' Day, the oldest sweet olive tree in the French Quarter is in the backyard, and it rained down white flowers all day.
Oh, wow.
So it just covered everything in these fragrant white flowers, and I just felt like, okay,
that's a sign.
This must be what I have to do, something important here. And then I found out whose house it had been, like within that week, and it just made my blood run cold. I mean, he didn't live, let me say, in this actual house. This actual house was built in 1820, the year that Madison came here, by a Frenchman who built these 3 houses. And these houses survived all the subsequent fires on the French Quarter. So it's one of the oldest buildings here. But this was truly the house of Boulony. I was at Historic New Orleans recently, and one of the curators came and said, I'd like to introduce you to some of Boulony's descendants. And I went, no, I don't want to meet Boulony's descendants. No.
Well, the guy who purchased one of the people who purchased my great grandfather's name was Samuel Cone, mm-hmm. and he owned a lot of property in the quarter, even somewhere the current day. I can barely talk because it's very heavy now. It's like you released it. For French Quarter is. So I'm gonna look at those sites because I have a list of some of the sites, mm-hmm. and see if any of them are close by. And I need to walk. I wanted to do that anyway. Mm-hmm. I wanted to walk some of those. I wanted to walk the quarter to go to some of those spots, thinking that maybe my grandfather walked mm-hmm. those places. Mm-hmm. That's why Congo Square is always so special to me, because I know without a doubt some of my ancestors were there. And sometimes you just have to go there and take that up. But I need to sit in this space and take in some of that evil and inhumanity and turn it into something beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I know the house will speak to me.
We just have to do that every day.
I need to do that. I need to spend some time here.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to create. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I know it'll be what it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. You know, in the back, in my guest room, I have a piece. Did you ever meet my friend Marianne Dubois Blanc, who was a primitive artist? She did wonderful, wonderful work. She was from Labadeville, Louisiana. And I wrote about her family. And in the course of doing the history of her family, I found out that her ancestors saw her husband and her 2 oldest sons beheaded by
Oh.
Toussaint Louverture.
Oh,
And it was so awful, and it upset her so much when I found out this information and about how she escaped and came to Louisiana after this horrible thing happened.
so these are
And-
people of African descent or European?
No, they were Acadians who'd been displaced by the English.
Okay.
And they were sold as indentured servants into Haiti to build the naval base that nobody wanted to use slaves to build because the Acadians were expendable. And then she survived that horribleness, married, and then Toussaint Louverture, when he came over the border, went to their indigo farm, beheaded her husband, her two oldest sons, and then she and two of her daughters escaped. Now, the reason I bring this up is because after she thought about it for a long time, she painted Toussaint Louverture and she said, "I forgive you." They were people of their times and they didn't know any better, and I need to forgive you for what you did. Because what Napoleon did to Toussaint Louverture, which I told her about, betrayed him, put him in a horrible prison in France. She said that was a horrible, horrible thing that happened to him too. And so she painted that portrait because I've always loved Toussaint Louverture, and she gave it to me. And one of the first things I did when I didn't have any furniture here is I decided Toussaint Louverture had to be here.
Oh, yeah. War is horrible. War is horrible.
It's horrible.
And America has, been at war. Now is a terrorist state, sometimes for people of African descent just to walk, especially males. They're terrorized, but war is horrible. And whatever it is, we have to try, to me, again, to learn from history, to give balanced reports about that, and to be light for someone else. Out of the darkness, we are the ones who can bring light.
We are. We have to.
And I don't think it's an accident that the name of our group is Guardians of the Flame, because a flame, it kind of sounds primal, not. And I really take what my father said seriously about the flame being our cultural traditions, our West African ancestry. And we are here, this is a condition. If I was in West Africa, I'll probably have a much different life. My ancestors hadn't been brought here, but this is the life I have. And I have to remember that and carry that with me, and that is the light. That is the light.